We need to talk about the Southport killer, and it's an extraordinary development. This is Axel Rudakubana, who has won privileges, including a TV and DVD player, to encourage him to behave. This, of course, is the triple child killer, who is one of the worst monsters in British history, who, whilst in jail, hurled boiling water at a guard, and that was in May, and had his regime raised from basic to standard. Well, those shouldn't be the words basic to standard, should it? It should be unpleasant to hell on earth. That's what it should be called. It means he gets more money to spend in the canteen plus time out of his cell. Rudakubana, who's 19, also has increased access to workshops, the library and the gym at HMP Belmarsh in southeast London. A source said it's outrageous that they've raised him to standard. They're basically bribing him to behave by saying, we'll give you a telly and you can keep it if you don't attack anyone. One of the country's former top cops, and what a shame he's not still in post and on the beat. Former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley joins me now. Peter, what a lovely treat to have you on the show. Good to see you again.
It's very, very nice to appear on your show. Thank you for having me.
Well, Peter, this will enrage the public, and rightly so.
Understandably. First of all, I must, of course, give tribute to the honour and the memory of Bibi, Alice and Elsie, and also the other children that Rudakubana tried to slaughter during his murderous rampage, and finally not forgetting those courageous adults who were left with life-changing injuries and who tackled that absolute piece of vermin.
Yeah.
Now, going on to this story, this very important story brought to us today by The Sun, another piece of sterling journalism from that newspaper.
Yeah.
It is utterly ridiculous, ludicrous, and an insult to the memory of those girls that Rudakubana should have his status raised from basic to standard. But the real revelation, which I bring to you this evening, comes courtesy of the wonderful Ian Aitchison, a former prison governor, and very much an inside and reliable source when it comes to all matters to do with the prison and the prison estate. He has revealed this afternoon that the state describe Rudakubana as a boy with needs. That is astonishing and gives you such a clear insight into the woke, liberal, hand-wringing, pathetic and frankly dangerous thinking that pervades not only senior people in the prison system, but the sentencing council, the parole board, and many other aspects of public life today.
Do we know whether he'll spend the rest of his life in prison, Peter?
He was given a minimum term of 52 years, so he will be 70 when he is eligible for parole. Personally, I doubt very much that he will ever be released because, of course, this is a person who has a premeditated violence in his mind all the time. It's what led to the Southport tragedy. It's what led to the attack on the prison guard. And so he is absolutely, I would think, quite probably the most dangerous person within the prison estate. And I don't see that 50 years in jail is going to change him. I'm sure he will remain as lethally dangerous till the day he gasps his last. And personally, that can't come too soon for me.
And 50 years at Her Majesty's pleasure will cost hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of pounds to the taxpayer. Could run into millions eventually, I suppose.
Yes, it will. And of course, many people will argue for a much cheaper option, which would be to put a rope round his neck and let him fall to his death. But incarceration is a real punishment for these kind of people who so often can't handle it. Look at the multiple killers, Harold Shipman and Fred West, for example.
Yeah. They
couldn't deal with lifetime incarceration, and unfortunately they were able to take their own lives and thereby evade it. He'll have a miserable time, but he should not have had this raising in standards merely to try and placate him. He should be on the lowest level with the lowest of privileges and a very miserable existence.
I should point out His Majesty's pleasure, of course, these days, and £2.1 million is the ballpark figure, although perhaps might go up. I mean, what is the best way to deal with someone like that, other than incarcerating them? What would you think to be an appropriate scenario for someone like Rudakubana in jail? What would it look like, do you think?
Well, unfortunately, to get him out of his cell, it's taken 4 prison officers in full riot gear. That's how dangerous he is. And of course, they're having to do that each and every day that he goes out.
Which takes a huge resource in a prison with other dangerous men.
In prisons that are understaffed.
Yeah.
A lot of them are tinder boxes. A lot of the staff now are young and inexperienced, and they're not paid enough, and they're expected to work on the front line for 50 years before they get a pension.
Yeah.
Which has also been nibbled away at by various governments. Rudakubana, because of his propensity for planning and then carrying out lethal violence, has to be treated very, very carefully. But as long as you've got people within the system saying he's a boy with needs, which is so deeply, deeply insulting to the memory of everybody that he killed and injured, then I'm afraid we might see his level of incarceration being given even more sickening privileges.
Phil has texted in, and he's been pretty powerful in his remarks, Peter. He said, "Hi, Mark. Bribe that scum to behave. What on earth is happening to this country? After what he's done, he should be locked in a small cell with nothing but a bed and toilet facilities and fed nothing but the basics to keep him alive, although he shouldn't have even been that. Bring back hanging and it guarantees he behaves." Why wouldn't you want this character swinging from a noose, Peter?
Because I believe that a lifetime of incarceration is the real punishment. Every day in their sad, pathetic, banged-up lives, they have to confront the consequences of their actions. And as I say, by the example of West, Shipman and many, many others, it just goes to show that it's intolerable for so many people.
Peter, what are your wider thoughts about the state of crime in this country at the moment? Shoplifting in particular strikes me as one of those, you know, on the face of it, minor crimes, but represents a significant malaise in our society.
Well, you'll forgive me, but I have to put you up there. There are no such thing as minor crimes or petty crimes or low-level crimes. These kind of expressions have been dreamt up by university-educated senior police officers in an effort to try and justify them doing nothing about them. It is not a minor crime if you are that one-man band shopkeeper and that £20, that £30, that £40 worth of goods that keeps disappearing out of your front door, having not been paid for, impacts upon your weekly profit and loss spreadsheet. It is not minor. It is not low level. If you have your phone stolen, upon which you can have your entire life, including your banking, and you can have that account cleared out, when you have many other things, credit cards and the such like. It's not low level if you cycle to work every day and a thief comes along and nicks your bike. These are not low level, petty or minor crimes. They are important, but we have a police service now, instead of a crime battling police force, that quite frankly does nothing about these crimes, which is why public trust is tanking and the police are becoming increasingly despised. Because they don't patrol the streets, that's why the criminals rule the roost. And because we have weak, pathetic governments with liberal, woke, fluffy ideology flowing through them, is it any surprise that we sadly live in an increasingly lawless Britain?
Like I said, isn't it a shame that Peter Bleksley isn't still on the beat? Luckily, he's an experienced former Met police detective and telling the absolute truth about the state of crime in our country. Peter, a delight to see you again. We'll catch up soon. Thanks to Peter Bleksley there for what was essentially a call to arms, really, for a change in culture in our policing, a completely different attitude to crime and incarceration.